Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for Mountain Housing Council Speaker Series. This series is an opportunity to dive deeper into a variety of housing topics, from today's session on pathways to home ownership through deed restriction incentive programs to past topics on short-term rental ordinances and key housing terms. The format for today's session will be about a 30-minute presentation and then a robust question and answer session. You can put questions in the chat box at any time. However, we'll wait until the very end of the presentations to address them. This meeting is being recorded in speaker view and can be reviewed after the session at mountainhousingcouncil.org. We'll also email it to everyone who registered for this event. We are joined today by Moonshine Inc. And I just wanted to see if there's any other members of the press on the call. And if you are, could you please take yourself off mute and introduce yourself? Okay, it doesn't look like we have anyone else then. So before I introduce our speakers, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Mountain Housing Council and who we are. The Mountain Housing Council is a project of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, whose mission is to connect people and opportunities, generating resources to build a more caring, creative, and effective community. Many of you know us for our grant making and scholarship work. Our mission-based initiative work, in addition to the Mountain Housing Council, includes Forest Futures and Family Strengthening through the Community Collaborative Program. We're led by a visionary board of directors. Joining us today are Alex Morilatos and Mike Rayfield. And Allison, do we have any other board members on the call?
Not that I'm seeing, Christina.
Okay, great. Thanks, Allison. My name is Christina Kind. I am the coordinator for the Mountain Housing Council and the Community Collaborative. Joining us today is my colleague, Allison Schwedner, who is the director of the Community Collaborative. And Allison, do we have any other colleagues on the call?
Not that I'm seeing either.
Thank you. Great. The Mountain Housing Council brings together 29 diverse stakeholders, businesses, local governments, community groups, special districts, and housing advocates to take on the unique and pressing challenges of achievable local housing in the North Lake Tahoe region. This is a list of all of our partners. As you can see in this slide, our region and scope is characterized by the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District. We know that there's a need for housing at every income level, from homelessness to middle income salary earners. The spectrum of needs, as seen in this slide, ranges from those having no income, so those experiencing homelessness, up to upper middle income earners at 245% AMI. The goal of this framework is to catalyze local conversations and innovations to serve housing needs across this whole spectrum, including areas where state and federal funding fall short in the teal and red areas. The majority of federal and state subsidy programs only provide financial support for housing programs that serve households earning no more than 80% AMI. There are few to no state or federal programs for the middle to above moderate income level households, making it more difficult to finance new housing for middle income salary earners. We also know there's a gap between traditional affordable housing programs and available housing in the Tahoe Truckee region. People who make too much to qualify for affordable housing developments, but too little to buy or rent market rate homes. This group includes teachers, firefighters, business owners, and many, many others. Ultimately, many of our workers are moving away, leaving employers unable to staff businesses and impacting our region's economy, culture, and vitality. So this slide further illustrates the affordability gap in our region. A family of four whose income level is at the upper end of our spectrum, a 245% area median income, can afford a home price of about $950,000. And we calculate buying power using a standard metric of multiplying annual income by 3.79. Also using the recommendation of a 20% down payment, and knowing that the median home price in our region is above 1 million, we know that purchasing a home for so many in our region is just untenable. To solve this housing problem, we need many tools, policies, and programs like the ones we're going to talk about today. In 2018, the Mountain Housing Council invited Vail Housing Director George Ruther to Truckee to speak on housing. Ruther is the town of Vail's housing director and longtime community development director. He presented a blueprint for tackling housing affordability in Colorado through deed restriction called the Vail in Deed program. You may have read about it in this popular article recently in Outside Magazine. It's important to note because two of the programs we're going to talk about today were modeled after the Vail in Deed program. So it is my pleasure now to introduce you to our speakers. Lynn Baumgartner is the program analyst in the Town of Truckee Housing Division. She's going to give us an overview of Truckee's newest housing program called the Tahoe Home Access Program, or THAP. And Robyn van Ekelenburg is the administrator for the THAP program, as well as for Placer County's Workforce Housing Preservation Program. She will give us an overview of what they call WHIP and speak to the differences of the programs and tell us a bit more about other tools that can be layered on with these programs. Joining her will be her colleague Teresa Martinez-Gonzalez and Anne-Marie Novotny. I also want to take a moment to introduce you to Gina Jones, who is the administrator for the Martis Funds Down Payment Assistance Program. She will not be presenting, but she can also answer any questions later in the program. And so I want to thank all of our speakers for joining us today. I'm going to now turn it over to Lynn, who again is the program analyst for the Town of Truckee. And the goal of the Town of Truckee Housing Division is to strengthen our community, economy, and environment by increasing the inventory of homes and of our local workers can afford to rent and buy. And so Lynn, I'm going to give it to you. Are you ready to go?
Well, actually going to have Robyn start.
We are. Okay.
We're going to tag team the presentation.
Okay, great. So is this correct though, the order of slide? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And Teresa and I are going to do this one together. So good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here and nice to be able to be a part of today's council meeting. So we're excited to be a part of this. You can go ahead and flip to the next slide. So first off, I'd like to start off by introducing my partner, Teresa Martinez-Gonzalez, and myself. We are co-partners and owners of Housing Inc. We are a local housing program administration organization and work kind of throughout the state with a focus up here in Placer County and in the Tahoe Basin. Teresa, I'd like to introduce you next.
Thank you. We can go on to the next slide, please. So I'll just briefly tell you a little bit about us. Robyn and I have been working in deed restricted programs, down payment assistance programs together for about 10 years. And before that, we worked on our own. We recently formed Housing Inc. because there's been such a demand for program administrators, and we partner with local governments, home builders, and property managers to offer homes for sale with restrictions that are priced for and offered to income eligible households. And we do contract with several cities and partners in Northern California, and Robyn partners with Cabrillo Economic Development Corporation in Southern California. And what we're doing with the Town of Truckee and for THAP, which you'll come to know in a couple of minutes, is we're working on the day-to-day activities to monitor and administer their program. So essentially the town manages Robyn and I to make sure that we're all working as a team together to do marketing, outreach, education, and pulling all the pieces together. And the way that we've set this up is that so it's a very seamless experience for everybody. And so you can contact us through the town, and we're super excited to be here. Our hearts are in Placer County. My family's been into HOMA since 1969, and my grandparents bought their house for $4,000 in 1969. And I think that that definitely, sets the stage for what the homes are costing now, $1 million plus dollars. We also, not only are our hearts here in the region, but our hearts are in affordable housing, and our hearts are for working with the workforce. And our experience brings us here today, and we're just really happy to meet you all and to be on the phone with you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Robyn.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. And actually, I think Lynn is going to go ahead and so next step is we're going to kind of talk about the background of the WHIP program, kind of what our goals are for the WHIP program, some very high level components of the program, how it works, and then with the goal that we invite those who are interested into a specific workshop that might work for you, right? So if you're a home buyer, we have a home buyer or home seller, home buyer, home seller centric focused workshops. And then we are also partnering with businesses and developers, and we have something specific for them. So the goal today is not to likely answer 100% of the questions. We hope we can, give you, enough information, but the goal is to, get you thinking, get you signed up for a workshop that, makes the most sense for you, and really give you some background on how THAP became to be. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Lynn.
Hi, like Christina introduced, I'm Lynn Baumgartner. I'm an analyst in the housing division at Truckee. And so the town has a number of existing housing programs and policies in place that aim to facilitate both low income and moderate income home production preservation. Revenue to support these programs comes from the town general fund, Measure K, and grants. And so I'm going to talk more about the Truckee Home Access Program, which is one of the tools in our toolbox for workforce housing. So THAP, or the program, focuses on buyers, sellers, businesses, and developers, and it was created to address the affordable housing issues faced by the local workforce. As we all know, it is a challenge for local buyers to find and finance a home for sale because Truckee's housing costs are high, funding assistance is limited, and over 50% of Truckee's housing units are utilized as second homes. The Truckee Home Access Program is just one solution, but this new program does broaden the scope of town housing programs to include a higher area median income limit and increase home ownership opportunities. Next slide, please. Truckee Home Access Program is designed to support the local workforce, and the household must have at least one member who is currently employed 30 or more hours a week, or meets the full-time employment equivalency with employer verification, for example, some school district employees, or has a written offer for full-time employment as at an employment site within the TTUSD boundaries to qualify as a buyer or renter within the program. THAP works in 3 ways. It offers financial assistance to buyers who work full-time in the region, don't earn more than the program's maximum income limits of 245% area median income, which comes to $241,080 for a household of 4 in Nevada County, and must also agree to keep their home available to a local worker at resale. Buyers can use the financial assistance for a down payment, home renovations, or other expenses. It also pays homeowners to sell their property to a household that qualifies for the program. The seller does not need to meet the program employment qualifications or income qualifications or residency, but the home must be within the town of Truckee limits. Finally, the Truckee Home Access Program works with local businesses and developers to offer compensation to create new rental or ownership housing opportunities for the Truckee workforce. The program offers payments up to $150,000 to local buyers, sellers, businesses, and developers in exchange for making for sale or for rent homes available for the local workforce through a long-term deed restriction. And we're going to get more into what this deed restriction is on a later slide. The participation of these different stakeholders will help move Truckee's market towards one that is more balanced and supportive of local employees achieving their dream of home ownership. Next slide, please. So the program has 3 main goals, and the first goal is to increase the percentage of total housing stock that is deed restricted. And our goal is 10% of the town's housing inventory will be deed restricted in the next 10 years. Next slide, please. The second goal is to expand the deed restriction program to include income levels up to 245% AMI. With the way the market is, as you've all seen, this is a level that is reasonable for home purchasing in the area while still needing that extra gap financing. This specifically raising up to this income level is intended to preserve housing stock at a range of income levels and reflect the current conditions of the for sale market. Next slide, please. And finally, our goal is to include more for sale product in our deed restriction program. Right now, the majority of the deed restricted units in Truckee are all rentals. All right, next slide, please.
Thanks.
I think this one's me too, right?
I think this one's me. Yeah, thanks, Lynn. It was great to get that background. So, this is just an overview of kind of why and how the THAP program, why it was created and how it's going to benefit buyers and sellers. So sellers can benefit from the THAP by selling their homes to a local worker that can leverage the THAP applicant pool to help sell a home and potentially reduce selling costs. And buyers, as Lynn had mentioned, are able to benefit from the THAP program by being provided financial assistance in exchange for a local worker deed restriction. I'm going to go into exactly what that means in just a second, but the nice thing about the THAP program is it can be used for a variety of different things, as Lynn had indicated, not only gap financing, but it also can be used to help avoid PMI, which is the primary mortgage insurance if you don't have a large enough down payment. It can be used to help reduce interest rates through buy downs or even free up assets. You are buying a home that has substantial renovations. It can help free up some of your assets to do that. So go ahead and switch to the next slide, please. So what is a deed restriction? A deed restriction is an agreement that runs with the land and has certain requirements. And the goal of the THAP restriction is to support the local workforce to achieve their dreams of home ownership in the Truckee region through a long-term deed restriction program. So the deed restriction is fairly simple. There's certain requirements that the buyer who is getting the benefit of the restriction will have to abide by. The first is that they have to have 10 months out of the year occupying the property, and we are going to monitor that annually. The deed restriction will permit, when approved by the town, long-term renting under a few different scenarios. One, the occupant can't pay more than 30% of their income towards rent, and two, they must meet income and employment requirements. And I'll go into exactly what the income is and how a household works here in just a second. The next important point of the program is that upon resale, the home has to be resold to an eligible applicant, and that time clock for the restriction, which is 55 years, starts over again. The next thing is that it requires that the town be notified at resale. And so the goal of the program, like Lynn had mentioned earlier, is to create really a secondary market for these more affordable workforce homes that then we will likely have this interest list of applicants who are applying to WHIP, so that sellers can really tap into that to be able to more easily market their home. As I mentioned, you are going to be required to recertify annually. And the other important point of the program is that, well, there's no price limit. So there's an initial sales price limit of $937,500 for that initial price. But in the future, you can sell your home for whatever you want to, but there are income limits, right? So it's important to know that that's likely going to impact the future amount that you can sell it for, even though there's no income or no resale pricing limits that you're bound by. Next slide, please. So here's some important property and buyer eligibility points that we want to make sure that we go over with you. So first thing is at least one household member has to work or is self-employed, but has to have a full-time employment in the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District geographic boundary. We will certify that and verify that when folks submit applications, which there will be an online process. And as we get you signed up for the right class that might work for you, we will go into detail about how that application process will work in that class. Buyers have to be mortgage ready and have a pre-approval letter from a mortgage company. The home value can't exceed for this year $937,500, and there can't be any code violations on the home, and we will, verify that as well. The other component is that the buyer cannot have liquid assets that exceed 30% of the home value. So liquid assets, as an example, are cash, stock, bank accounts, real estate. So we'll look at all of that and determine that your liquid assets, don't exceed that 30% of the home value. The next important point is that the buyer's total household income cannot exceed 245% of AMI. And I just want to point out, is very likely different than a lender's income. So when we're looking at calculating income, we're looking at all adult members of the household, whereas lenders are generally only looking at loan applicants' income. So what we'll do is we'll look at your total household size, and we will have you complete an application that outlines the household members. And then based on what you submit, we will calculate your income, your household income, but it's based on who's going to be living in the home. So for example, we will be looking at, just as an example, if it's a husband and a wife and a child and maybe a grandma, we'll be looking at if grandmother has, say, Social Security income, we'll be looking at that in addition to maybe the husband and wife's income. So it's really the total household income that we're going for. And again, it must be owner occupied 10 months out of the year, and no short-term rentals. We do permit long-term rentals. Next slide, please. So compensation limits. So buyers can receive up to $150,000 of gap financing on a home price not to exceed $937,500. Sellers can receive the same compensation, $150,000. It works a little differently though. What we're asking from the sellers is that you would reduce your price of your home. So as an example, if you can flip to the next slide, because it's laid out in a graph. So as an example, if you're a seller and your appraised value is $937,500, we ask you to sell the price, the sales price to the buyer of $787,500. THAP would then give you the difference up to that appraised value, up to $937,500, and in turn, you'd sell that property to a lower price to a buyer. In lieu of a seller, for a buyer, it would be used likely as gap financing and down payment assistance. And then this is just an example. THAP does not have a hard down payment requirement. Likely most people would want to probably bridge the gap, right, to be able to have that 20% down. But in this example, with the maximum price at $937,000, THAP would be gap financing of 16% of the sales price. The buyer could contribute up to 4%, and then your new first mortgage would be that $750,000. So there's a lot of different ways, as I mentioned before, that you can utilize the funds. It does not have to, as a buyer, does not have to go exclusively for gap financing. If you have funds, if you'd like to use some of those funds for closing costs or renovations or rate buy downs, we can work with you and the lender in terms of how to structure it to make it make most sense for your unique situation. Next slide, please. So the process. So this is a very high level overview of the process. When you come back to the buyer seller meeting, we'll actually walk you through how to apply. It is a pretty simple process. It's a two-step process. So we are asking people to, one, apply for the THAP approval. And well, it's really a three-step process, but apply for the THAP approval. You're going to attend an education workshop. From that education workshop, you're going to get a unique link to be able to apply for the program. And it's a very safe and secure site that we use with the town that we've developed. They'll submit a buyer application along with supporting documents. And then once you are approved for that, then you can go shop for a home. Once you find a home, then you'd actually submit you'd submit a property application. So it's a fairly simple process. It will take a few days. You might need things kind of back and forth, but occasionally we can and likely we can approve our participants fairly quickly, provided we get all the information that we need up front. It's a really, we created a really wonderful website that's really easy to navigate. So at the end of this, we will give you that website so you can very easily find out and sign up for the programs and for the workshop and read the guidelines so that you're able to understand exactly what this means. In terms of the seller, the town encourages sellers to contact the THAP administrator. So we have an email address that we'll give you at the end of this as well. And we will conditionally approve your buyers if you're already working with someone. And we will have you submit a seller application along with supporting documents as well as a property application. So anyway, so we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the THAP application process with local businesses and developers. So we will consult with each in partnership with the town, with each local business and developer applicant on the application and through the deed restriction process. THAP program proposals for compensation in exchange for deed restrictions will be approved by town council on a case-by-case basis. So if you're a business or a developer interested in leveraging the THAP program, I encourage you to go to our website, which we'll give you at the end of this slide deck, and get you the application for that. Next slide, please. So workshops. So we have workshops coming up starting on November 7th. Going through December. If you are a buyer or seller interested in leveraging the THAP program, Christina has kindly dropped the link for the Town of Truckee THAP website in your chat. Go ahead and click that and you will see this blue button titled Workshops. And go ahead and click that and it will take you to all 4 workshops. And then from there you can sign up for whichever one you would like. If I can, Christina, there are a couple questions I just want to address that I think are specific to household.
Can I say something, Robyn?
Sure.
So there's also on our website workshops for realtor lenders. So if you have realtor lender partners and friends that might want to participate in our program or partner with us with THAP, check out, and we'll make sure everybody has the links. Check out the realtor lender workshops, and just generally we just want to invite everybody to spread the word. So attend a workshop and then tell your friends and your family and your colleagues and your coworkers about the workshops, and let's work together to get people educated and informed about our program. I'll drop a couple more links in the chat too.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So real quick, and then I'll turn the floor back to you, Christina. What defines a household? Does it include unmarried partners? If so, do both oops, sorry about that. I lost my chat. If so, do both household members need to be on the deed if one partner works within the district? So if you're unmarried, but you're partners and you're going to be living in the home, yeah, you both need to be on the deed restriction. If the other, right, yes, even if the other member is the one who is the who works within the district, you both need to be on that restriction. Should we, Christina, keep our log of questions? I just wanted to clarify that household for the next slide deck, or
Sure.
should
Yeah, I think
answer
so.
these?
Let's wait on the next two questions. So
Okay.
Thanks for answering that one, though. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that's it. So here's again, you have it in your chat, the townofTruckee.com/THAP. It's on your screen. Our email is super simple, thap@townoftruckee.com. Please reach us with any questions. We hope most of the questions will be made available in the meeting. Sometimes there are questions that are, very unique to your situation, and we likely wouldn't address those, but we can definitely address those offline. So I encourage you to sign up for a meeting and email us if you have any questions. Next slide, please.
Great. So this will be you as well. Is that right, Robyn?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you guys are gonna get sick of hearing from me. So I'm again here to present on the Placer County's Workforce Housing Preservation Program, which is very similar to the WHIP program, although there's some important differences. So once we've gone through our slide deck for WHIP, I created kind of a summary of some of the differences or some important points that I think you're going to want to make sure you have distinction on. So I don't want to reintroduce myself again because you've had to hear from me this whole time, but I am also partnering and working with Placer County. I've been working with the county for almost 2 years now in a variety of different capacities. So this is a really exciting program, the first of its kind that we were able to launch in the state. So there is a lot of interest in it. And I want to introduce you to my partner at Placer County, Anne-Marie Novotny, who's here with us today, and she's a senior housing specialist. Hi, Anne-Marie. Thanks for joining.
Hi, thank you for introducing me.
Okay, next slide, please. So Placer County's Workforce Housing Preservation Program, or WHIP, is a homebuyer assistance program designed to secure housing inventory for the local workforce that ensures access to home ownership opportunity long-term. Next slide. So WHIP has some strong goals ahead, and the goal really is to create, like we discussed for THAP, a secondary market for workforce housing to ensure that the local workforce has the opportunity to buy in the area where they work. So the goal for 21-22 is 5 homes. We have closed a couple of homes so far. We do have some funding available. And our goal is to have an annual of $3 million to replenish and dedicate to this workforce housing preservation program, with a goal of 275 homes in the next under 10 years. Next slide, please. So how can Placer's WHIP program achieve this goal? WHIP will pay buyers up to 16% of the purchase price of their home, up to $150,000 in exchange for an agreement, also known as a deed restriction, that runs with the land. And this will require that the home be occupied or sold to a local worker. Next slide, please. Some really important program points that I wanted to ensure you understood about the WHIP program. First, it's up 16% of the sales price, up to $150,000, whichever is less. You do have a minimum contribution of 4% that will be required. It can be gifted. It can be, some people pull from their 401k. That would be acceptable as well. Lenders do sometimes require more than that. So you would have to speak to your lender to figure out your unique, specific financing scenario. The use deed restriction will run for 55 years with the land, and it will renew each time a home sells. There are no appreciation caps and no pricing restrictions on the WHIP program. And we must have at least one household member who is currently employed full-time 30 hours or more a week at an employment site within the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District geographic boundary. Also important to note, there are no area median income or income requirements for buyers or occupants. The only requirement is that they meet that local employment, geographic employment requirement. Buyers also must be pre-approved and mortgage ready to be able to submit an application for the program. Next slide, please. So some property requirements for the WHIP. So the home must be located in East Placer County. I know that seems obvious, but we've had people ask if it can be, in other counties, so it has to be in Placer. Home must appraise for the purchase price, and buyers should provide us with all the available inspections. Property can be rented out on a short-term basis for no more than 30 days each calendar year with county approval. Property can be rented on a long-term basis to a qualified occupant who also meets that local employment requirement. And when the home is sold in the future, it must be sold to another local eligible worker who meets that local worker requirement. And this is an important one. Ongoing, we will monitor annually to ensure that at least one applicant is a qualified resident at all times. Next slide, please. So the process is pretty simple with WHIP. You will first, and I'm going to go over exactly where to apply for this. You're going to submit a buyer application. We have a site that we created specifically for WHIP to be able to upload and submit your application. Once you've submitted your application, you will get a pre-approval from the county, and I work behind the scenes to underwrite the applications that come in. So you'll likely be hearing from me. Once you are approved with the county, then you can go ahead and go look for a home, and you will receive a unique link in that approval that you get from the county to be able to submit what we call a property application. And that's a much more detailed process because we're going to need things specific to the actual purchase that you're making. And then from there, we will work very closely with you to be able to get the funding approved and the funding transferred. We've closed a few escrows with the WHIP program, so we've got it down pretty well internally, and we really prioritize this program. I can't express how important it is to the county and the housing team. So we really prioritize not only every WHIP applicant that comes in, but every property application is we really prioritize that internally. So you definitely have our commitment to being a partner in helping you close on your home. Next slide, please. So what are you going to need to apply? So before you go to apply, you want to have a few things available so that you can upload them through the site. You're going to want to have recent pay stubs for all the applicants. You're going to want to have bank statements. You're going to need a pre-approval letter from a lender. And then, as I mentioned before, upon that program approval, you'll get a unique link for property application that will allow you to submit the property application when you are in escrow for a home. So when you're in escrow and you're ready to purchase and you have a contract and a meeting of the minds there, you're going to want to provide us with a copy of the purchase agreement and any counter offers and addendums, a title report, essentially all of your escrow, title and escrow contacts, an estimated closing date, and some things will be to follow that you won't have right away. Like inspections and lender documents, and you may need updated pay stubs depending on when you are approved. So what I recommend to everyone is to contact myself and Anne Marie if you're in the process of buying and you've been approved, to keep us updated on what's going on so that we can let you know the availability of funding, and we can put that on our radar to make sure we can prioritize. So and we'll give you our information at the end of this slide deck. Next slide, please. So the next thing is you're going to want to apply online. So you can go ahead and visit www.placer.ca.gov/WHPP. And then in about the middle of the screen, you're going to see this green apply online button. Next slide, please. When you click that, you'll go to this application. I didn't give you the entire application, but it's pretty straightforward. You're going to fill this out at the end of the application before you sign. It will give you the ability to upload those documents that I asked you for at the beginning. And once you submit, that notification comes to myself and Anne Marie, and then we take it from there. Next slide, please. So next steps is, we have funding now. We want to get the word, continue to get the word out about the program. Please let anyone you know about this program. We are excited to continue to partner and work to help people achieve their dreams of ownership where they work. So again, visit the placer.ca.gov/WHPP. You can contact myself or Anne Marie with any questions. And we really look forward to working with you. Thank you. Next slide. Is this still me, Christina? Yeah. Okay. Oh, you guys get to hear me for like 10 more minutes. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Robyn, not to interrupt, and I am interrupting, sorry. But we have about 18 minutes. And so I don't know if we can go through them, like maybe pick and choose and go a little faster, so we have some time for questions. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to make this one really, really quick. We wanted to compile 2 more things for you guys. And so the slide decks are going to be made available after, right, Christina, after the presentation. So if you can go to the next slide. So I wanted to put together some additional important points for THAP and WHIP because they are very similar, but not the same. We compiled a list of some important points on things to think about within the programs, and we'll make this available to you. This is like not all comprehensive by any means, but I want to get that to you all. Read the documents, right? Read the guidelines, read the notes and deeds that go with it. Can you go to the second slide? And then the next thing is some and I didn't put Martis Fund on here because you're going to hear from Gina at Martis Fund. But in addition to Martis Fund and WHIP and THAP, there are a few other programs available to first-time homebuyers that I think are really important programs to that you might not know about that are funding ongoing or over the counter or on hold, but going to come back soon. So we'll get this list to you also. These are likely programs you're not aware of. So, and that's kind of it for me. Christina, how do we want to do this next?
Sure. So we do have a few questions in the chat that we'll start with. And then if anybody else has a question, please put it in the chat box, or once we get through the ones that are already in the chat box, you can raise your hand. And we have about 15 minutes. I don't know if any of our speakers are able to stay a little bit after 1, if possible, if there are more questions than we have time for. So thanks for answering the very first one. Okay, so there was a question, would liquid assets include any small business owner assets such as retail inventory, heavy machinery, or construction equipment? And that was when you were talking about the THAP program.
So for the small businesses, that will handle that differently. So your applicant, so the if you were to rent the THAP unit out, that resident would have to be THAP, meet that THAP income and asset. For a small business, that would be a little different. And so we're looking at that a little differently. So I encourage you to submit a small business application. And I also want to point out that's a whole different pool of money. While it's the same program, it's a different pool of money that we're working with for the local businesses and developers. So we wouldn't look at that the same as we would for a buyer.
And if the buyer owns a small business, do you look at that small business as part of the liquid assets?
I think we'd have to look at it and see, you know, how it's structured.
Got it. Thank you. The next question, when you say that buyers can go find a home after completing the 3 steps, is the entire for sale housing inventory and Truckee limits available to the buyer, or simply the homes that are for sale that are already within the THAP program, which it's the full area?
Yeah, it's the full area, provided home values that they can't exceed that 937,500.
And then will you help facilitate discussions between the buyer and seller to convince the seller to lower the selling price of their home to the, and they wrote to 930, but I think it was 957. Is that right?
No,
max
930, yeah, 937,500. You know, we'd definitely be open to however we could participate and help bridge that gap.
Great,
I just want to note, we have THAP specific FAQs on the website, and I put a link directly to that. So if you might be able to find your question on there as well.
Great, thank you so much, Lynn. This question is by Carolyn. Would a lease to own situation be eligible? Would both the buyer and seller in the scenario be able to apply?
Yeah, no, I can't think of off the top of my head how we could do a lease to own because I mean, the seller, right? The seller wouldn't have to qualify, but the buyer would. So the buyer would have to be either that or this. Yeah, I don't think that would work. I mean, I could think on that more, but I don't know that that's a scenario that would work.
Okay, great. So you'll think on it more. And that was a good question. And then Jen asked about the AMI. So it is county specific. Currently, there is no specific town or Truckee income. For the WHIP program, if the home transfers to a family member, does the 55-year deed restriction renew?
As in inheritance?
And Karen, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd renew the deed restriction. So yeah, and really in any transfer.
And then Sarah asked the question if the WHIP program is only for buyers, unlike the THAP program, if that was accurate, and that is accurate. Another question, if the 55-year deed restriction renews at every transfer of ownership, is the only way for the deed restriction to be removed for one owner to own the property for more than 55 years? And that is correct.
Correct.
Your understanding is correct, Faith. Thanks for the link, Lynn. We see it in the chat box. And Scott is asking, how much funding has been allocated to this program? How many houses per year can be brought into this program under its current funding availability? I think we had that in the slides for both program, but I'll let you answer that.
I just pulled up the budget for fiscal year 22-23. THAP has $700,000 in the budget for the household, so that's buyers and sellers, $125,000 for local businesses, and $345,000 for developers for 22-23. And then for 23-24, not approved, but projected budget is $768,000 for buyers and sellers. So there's funding for this program forecasted out for the next 5 years, and a significant, it will depend on how the value of the houses that are purchased and sold through the program, because it will, it varies based on the price of the home. But that's about how much we have in the budget for this year and next year. And you can look at the budget on the Town of Truckee website to see more details.
Were there any other questions?
Did you want to talk about budget? I think you had it on your slide, Robyn, though, but for Placer County.
Sure. Yeah. So we've got enough for about 3 more transactions. It really, like Lynn mentioned, it really depends on what the sales prices are, right? So I don't know exactly how much we have, but I want to say it's close to 300,000 left in the budget. Might be a little less than that, but likely enough for 2, potentially 3, depending on the the values of the homes that sell.
So get your applications in today. It's a lesson for that answer. So is Scott correct in saying, so that'd be about 5 to 7 units per year, maybe a little less? Yeah. Okay. If you have any other questions, please put them in the chat box, or please raise your hand. And you can raise your hand just in your little square, or you can use the raise hand function on Zoom. Crystal, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm the new program manager at Tahoe Prosperity Center, and just wanted to introduce myself. I'm just curious, I've attended quite a few town halls. Are we focusing on the teachers and the firefighters, essential workers? I'm hearing they can't afford to purchase a home.
Yeah, we've done a fairly comprehensive outreach, but we're definitely focusing, as we did for WHIP, on the Tahoe Truckee School District itself, the local fire departments, and actually we crafted and updated our guidelines just to ensure, particularly for the firefighters, that they'd qualify, right? Because while they're locally serving, their paychecks might be associated with another department. And so, we really try to craft the program to encompass and embrace that. And essentially the same for the THAP program. We're really trying to focus locally, particularly with the school district employees, to be able to keep them in the area where they work and serve.
Thank you.
It's nice.
Since I'm not seeing any quite yet, and we still have time, so if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat box. But I know we have Gina Jones on from Sierra Business Council, and so Gina, I'm not sure if you can hear me and you're still available, but if you want to give just a quick update on the Martis Funds Home Buyer Program.
It's right.
Is that you, Gina?
Yes, that's me. Hi.
Oh, I see you now. Okay, sorry.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah, we just we're in the process of, we just raised the loan amount for the Martis Fund from 50,000 up to 75,000. We are in, I have 110,000 left in the fund currently, and I have about 7 files that have funds reserved, and all of those are in Hopkins Village. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I'm sure you are. The Hopkins Village with the Martis Fund does come with its own set of deed restrictions. And we are working with the board of directors with the Martis Fund right now to just get that that tightened up. So I haven't actually released updated program guidelines out to the public yet that talk about Hopkins Village and the deed restriction and all that, because we just want to get it right and have it be Sierra Business Council. They administer the Martis Fund on behalf of the board of directors for the Martis Fund. So I'm their program administrator. I take the file from application all the way to funding and closing, and then I hand it back to Sierra Business Council, and then they service the loan from that there on out. Yeah, does anybody have any questions regarding that? I'm getting a little bit of confusion in the industry and amongst people because of all the programs that you guys are offering. People are starting to kind of feel and think that the MARTIS fund is a grant, right? And that they're going to have that period where it gets forgiven. And it's as of today, it's not. It's a loan and it's for 30 years. And even if the people in Hopkins Village, you know, that use the MARTIS fund, we will go up to 100,000, but that's just per the board agreeing on that. And I haven't put that out there yet, but we do have files reserved for that amount currently. But what I have found out is that like the workforce housing program, they have their deed restriction on all their transactions that they are closing. They were trying to layer workforce housing and MARTIS fund in Hopkins Village, and we can't have two different animals of deed restrictions on one property. However, if someone were to buy a property outside of a deed restricted, if someone were to buy a home that didn't have an existing deed restriction to it, the regular MARTIS fund down payment assistance program would layer with workforce housing as long as we stay in second position. I hope that makes sense, but that just allows for somebody to have a lot more purchasing power and to qualify with 2 down payment assistance programs.
Thank you, Gina. And we get asked that question all the time, if people can use the workforce housing preservation program at Hopkins Village. And as you said, the answer is no. And it is very confusing.
Yeah.
And so thank you, Robyn, too, for like helping to figure out like how do we layer these tools with the existing programs. So sorry, I don't want to keep talking. So thank you for answering John's question. Condos and townhouses would be eligible for these programs. And then this is a good question by Alexa. Would the funds be taken away, or would the occupant homeowner be fined if they left their local job? What happens if they?
So for THAP, that a resident has to initially meet that local worker qualification. For WHIP, a resident has to always remain in the home that's a local worker. So you'd have to, if you left your job, like let's say you got transferred to a different area, you'd have to rent your home to someone who met that local worker requirement.
Thank you. And I think this is our last question. If a recipient moves, will they have to rent or sell their property immediately?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing annual certification. So by the point of that annual certification, we don't want homes sitting, right, empty and vacant. By the point of that annual certification, you'd have to have it rented to someone who met that local worker eligibility.
And we have time for one more question. If anybody does have another question, I just want to make sure we give that time. What happens if a local worker applicant later takes a remote or telework job? Which is just what you said, then they could rent it. Oh, no, I am understanding. Okay, telework. Yeah. So if their position changes. Yeah.
Well, I guess it would come down to still that for WHIP, for that local worker. I guess we haven't encountered that yet. So I guess it would depend on what you were doing. We'd have to talk offline about that.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us today for Mountain Housing Council Speaker Series. I want to give a really warm, heartfelt thank you to our speakers, Lynn, Robyn, Anne Marie, Teresa, Gina. Thank you all for joining us. It's complicated, and I think we're all going to visit the websites later and review these slides later. And I just thank you for really organizing it for us and putting out the FAQs and putting out the comparison graph between the two programs. It's so helpful. So I will email these to everyone who registered for this event. As I said earlier, we are recording this event as well. So we will send you a link to the recording so you can watch it again. And with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.